I've said it before and I'll say it again. A homemade Crunchwrap Supreme is one of the best tasting things you can make in your kitchen right at home. We'll start by cooking our beef, and for that I'll go into a pan over medium-high with a bit of oil, then into the pan with my beef, and I'll spread it all out, leaving some space in between so it can get nice and crispy while I come on over here to chop up my onion. I'll slice this in half, then chop it all up into nice small and even pieces, and I'm even going to run my knife through there a couple more times just to make sure no large onion chunks exist. And once that's fully chopped, I'll move on over to my jalapenos. But don't throw away this juice. There's lots of flavor in here, and we're going to use it. I'm going to chop my jalapeno up to about the same size as my onion, and once they look similar, I'm gonna go check on my beef, make sure we got some nice browning happening on the bottom here, and after checking that we got some nice flavor and some good browning on the bottom, I can add in my onion and my chopped jalapenos. Once that's in, I'll hit it with some salt. That's gonna start drawing out that moisture and flavor from those onions, and then we'll stir things around for a few minutes to break up all that beef and also soften the onion in the process. Remember, since all of this is gonna be the filling of a crunch wrap, we can't have any pieces of beef that are too large. You'll wanna make sure they're in nice, small chunks. It's perfectly okay for them to have some texture, but you do want them to be pretty small. Once all that beef is broken up, I'm gonna grab a few spices. These are the ones I picked out, but you can certainly use your own spice blend if you want. And I'm gonna season this with some smoked paprika, a little bit of garlic powder, some nice ground cumin. That's one of the spices that's gonna give our beef that classic taco night flavor and smell here. A little bit of chili powder, and to finish, some fresh cracked black pepper. Once again, I'll stir this around to fully combine and toast off some of those spices. But then, before they burn, grab that jalapeno liquid and a little bit of extra water, and together, we're gonna add these both in to deglaze. That's gonna temporarily halt the browning process, and the jalapeno juice is supposedly a trick they use at Taco Bell to give their beef more flavor. Once it gets to a stage where there's just a little bit of liquid left on the bottom and you start to see these big bubbles that are poking out from all the different holes, turn off the heat and shift this to the side. Now that we've finished making our beef, we're gonna make a few tostadas, and what that means is that we're gonna fry off a couple of corn tortillas. To do that, I'm gonna add a nice layer of oil into the bottom of a pan, and once the oil begins to shimmer and that gets nice and hot, I'll add in my corn tortillas one at a time, and then just use whatever utensils you have in your kitchen to keep it as flat as possible while it cooks. Once you feel that it's fully fried and crispy, go ahead and set it off to the side, where you'll wanna hit it immediately with a pinch of salt. While I repeat this process with the rest of my tortillas, I like to play a little game to see which one I can get to be the flattest. I don't think that one's gonna win, but this one right here might. That is a very flat tostada. Although I do have one more chance. See how much better they got as we kept cooking? It's fun to play little mini games while you cook. With this last sprinkle of salt, our tostadas are done. To make our cheese sauce, we're gonna keep it simple. It's not gonna be as easy as going into the supermarket and buying a cheese sauce, but this will only take us just a few minutes. I'll start by grating up some cheddar cheese and then unwrapping a few slices of this classic American cheese. I still can't believe that this is actually cheese. Cheese should not do this. That's not cheese. And once all that's ready to go, I'll come over to a small pot, and then over medium heat, I'll add a little bit of butter. Make sure your flame's not too hot. We don't want to color the butter in any way here. And once that's fully melted, I'll add in a little bit of flour, and then whisk this together to make what's called a roux. Once it turns a nice dark blonde color like this, I'll whisk with one hand while pouring in a little bit of my milk with another. And once I make sure that absolutely no clumps remain, I'll pour in the rest of my milk and continue whisking to thicken things up. Once I start to see some light bubbles forming around the edge, I'll tear in little pieces of my American cheese. Doing this will make it a lot easier for us to melt it. And now, over nice low heat, I'll continue whisking until it looks fully melted. Because that cheese is so bright compared to our milk mixture, it should be pretty obvious when it's fully gone. And now, to finish up our sauce, I'm gonna add one little handful at a time of my cheddar cheese, whisking each time until it's fully melted and then adding in a little bit more. And I'll just follow this process over and over until I've used and melted all of my cheese. By the end, your sauce will have gotten quite a bit thicker, so we can set this aside and keep moving. No Crunchwrap is complete without a sauce, so I'll start by chopping up a jalapeno. The blender's gonna do most of the work here, but I'm gonna do my best to make it just a little bit easier. Then a few cloves of garlic. Customize this part to make it as garlicky or not garlicky as you want. If you're sensitive to cilantro, go ahead and replace this with something like parsley or dill. And I'm just gonna give it a couple simple chops. We're going to be using everything, stem and all. Once that's done, I'm gonna open up one avocado. Fingers crossed it's a nice avocado. Yeah, it's nice. And we only need one avocado for this recipe, so I'm gonna peel one half and save the other for a snack. Finally, I'll chop 2 limes. This has a lot of lime juice in it because lime juice is awesome. And then I'll bring up my blender and in I'll go with the juice of all 4 of my limes. Normally I'd be squeezing them by hand, but I really want to get out every last drop of juice here. And I'll follow the lime juice with some sour cream, a pinch of cumin, just a little bit of sugar to balance out all the acidity, then all of my cilantro. I feel so bad for people that can't eat cilantro. I'm sorry. Then my garlic, oops, bloop, my jalapeno, and a little bit of salt. Don't worry, I didn't forget about you yet, avocado. Now we blend. Remember once or twice to go back and scrape down the sides of your blender. These are all delicious little bits that you're gonna wanna have in your sauce. And once your sauce starts to look something like this, turn it off, add in your avocado, and then blend again nice and low. Once it's fully mixed and looks something like this, go ahead and turn it off. Transfer this to a bowl. It should be a beautiful light green color. Then cover and let this sit in the fridge to start to firm up. We're in the final stages of prepping our Crunchwrap, and the last thing we have to do is get all of our toppings ready. So first, I'm gonna grate some of this Colby Jack cheese. This cheese is great for a Crunchwrap because it's really mild, so it's not gonna compete with any of the other ingredients, but it's also super meltable. So it's gonna give you that really good gooey texture in the final Crunchwrap. To grate it, I'm gonna go the long way, so I get these nice, beautiful long strands of cheese. You'll understand this better when I put my Crunchwrap together in a moment, but longer strands are gonna mean better, cheesier texture. Next, let's move on to cut our tomatoes. These are Roma tomatoes, but I suppose you could use really any kind of tomato that you want. Whatever kind you do use though, the key is gonna be to make sure you scoop out all the guts of the tomato. Why? Because we don't want all that moisture to ruin our Crunchwrap and get rid of all the crunchiness. Without it, I know that tomatoes tend to look a little weird and naked, but this small step is really important for getting a killer texture. Once I've removed all the insides, I'm gonna chop my tomatoes first into nice even strips, and then I'll cut them into small even cubes. And finally, we move on to our lettuce. You'll want to get a nice crispy lettuce like iceberg that's going to retain its nice texture inside the Crunchwrap. I'm going to chop up my lettuce into nice thin strips like this, but a little is going to go a long way here, so that's about all we need. It turns out that the only way to make a Crunchwrap Supreme is to get these giant custom tortillas, and the only place that has them is Taco Bell. So I showed up to Taco Bell and begged them to give me some of their tortillas. And if you don't believe me, I'm sure someone watching this video has worked at Taco Bell at some point, if not now, and you can support me in the comments down below. But this is the actual bag from Taco Bell that they get their giant tortillas in. Before I put together my Crunchwrap Supreme, I'm actually gonna wet some paper towels. I don't want these soaked, just nice and damp. And then I'll toss this in the microwave for just a few seconds to soften it up a little bit. While that's happening, I'm gonna take another tortilla, and then using this plate as a reference, I'm gonna trace all the way around it to get a nice circular piece of tortilla that I'm gonna use to seal my Crunchwrap. That was satisfying. After just 15 seconds, this should be good to go. Now this shouldn't crack as much when we fold our Crunchwrap Supreme together. And to prepare it, I'll go down with some of my beef. Say what you want about Taco Bell, but they do season their beef quite well. And once we've made that into a nice circular shape, we'll bring in our cheese, which by the way, has now thickened up quite a bit, exactly what we wanted. And I'll drizzle some of that right over the top. Then next, my tostada, which is still, here's some proof, very crunchy. That's what your tostada needs to sound like. And next, some sour cream on top of the tostada and spread all around evenly across the whole top. You'll know you did a good job layering if your tostada fits perfectly over the top of your beef like this. I actually should have measured a bit, but I just eyeballed this one and it worked out. And then on top of this, it sort of acts like a glue. We'll add some lettuce, then an even sprinkling of our tomato. Starting to look like a Crunchwrap, that's for sure. Then some Colby Jack cheese laid across in those nice long strands that I talked about earlier. Wow, I am drooling right now. And to finish, I'll add this little hat on top and lightly compress without breaking my tostada. And before I close it, one last look to see how I layered it, since I think this is the best way. You start with some meat, then go with your homemade cheese sauce, then tostada, then sour cream, then lettuce, then tomato, then cheese, then the little topper. And now we fold by pulling up the top, then pressing down next to it and folding again, and then repeating that same process all the way around the Crunchwrap. Tuck, fold, tuck, fold, and repeat that process all the way around until you get to the end, where you kind of just have to then fold that last piece up however it allows you to. And once I finish folding, I'll toss this plate on the top to hold my Crunchwrap together while I jump over here to preheat my pan. To give our Crunchwrap that nice classic crust, we'll go into our pan with a small bit of oil, and once it begins to shimmer, I'm gonna carefully grab my Crunchwrap. This is the hardest part of the whole recipe, but I find it's easiest if you get a spatula or something like this and then use it to help you guide it on without losing that fold. Fingers crossed, here we go. Now we gotta let it do its thing. If all goes well here, our cheese will melt and we'll get a nice, beautiful golden brown crust. Once you feel that it's got a nice seal and the golden brown crust, go ahead and give it a flip. Oh baby, that's a good Crunchwrap. The most important piece of advice I have for you while making a Crunchwrap Supreme is patience. The tortillas can burn really fast and really easily, but they also need to sit there for a while to cook and slowly melt that cheese. So it makes sense all around to go low and slow when you cook these. See if I've got a crust on the other side. Oh my gosh, I don't know which one's better. Before I cut it, listen. That's what your Crunchwrap needs to sound like. Be confident when you cut it. Good crunch, that's a good start, but let's see how the inside looks. Boom. Now all I need is a big Baja Blast and my day will be complete.